Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude. Regardless, this is a book that has been translated into over, around 40 languages. Probably more, probably less, but it's definitely more than 30 at least. The 100 Years of Solitude is what made the Latin American literature genre of fantastical reality, or whatever it's called. Apparently it's magical realism. Regardless of what it's called, this is the book I've read, and right now I'm going to summarize half of the book. According to Spark Notes, that's chapter 1 to chapter 10. So let's get this started with. Firstly, you've got to know the basics. This goes ahead and talks about 7 generations of stories. And inside this place, this village of Maconda, we go ahead and find out a lot of different things. You'll also find supernatural things and a lot of mischronological events. This is the first line of the book. Many years later, as he faced the firing squad, Colonel Aurelia Buendia was to remember that distant afternoon when his father took him to discover ice. Now, firstly, this is the family tree. There's the matriarch of the family named Jose Arcadio Buendia. He and his wife, Ursula Iguaran, go ahead and have a pretty good family. And this is basically how it works out. This little story starts off with a flashback where their son, a colonel, he gets his nickname as a colonel because of his wartime efforts, Colonel Aureliana Buendia, went ahead and remembered that time when his dad, Jose Arcadio, went ahead and taught him what ice is. Basically, it does say discover ice, but it's just teaching him ice. It starts off with Jose going ahead and having a literal dream. This dream is of a city literally made of glass, or something like glass. Otherwise, it is basically glass. He went ahead and used it to go ahead and discover this new city, and he founded it and christened it Macondo. Macondo went ahead and became a pretty big place. It was very fabulous, and he eventually got a few followers to live in the village. He initially set off in a place where civilization was, absolutely no contact with other civilizations. And this ended up backfiring a little bit. There is a lot more that we can go ahead and think about, so here's how it works out. After Jose went and founded his city, went ahead and went to this little craze thing. A bunch of gypsies started coming around, and the supposed leader of the gypsies, Melquiades, went ahead and became great friends with Jose. He went ahead and introduced Jose to several things, including magnets, which Jose was convinced could go ahead and get out gold. What they neglected to mention was that gold was not magnetic. He later traded that magnet for this little telescope thingy. And instead of the telescope, they gave him a magnifying glass. And then they had this gigantic magnifying glass, this is a human, that's the magnifying glass. And they used it to concentrate the rays of the sun. Let me just draw a sun real quick. And they concentrated the rays of the sun into this one little focal point, which went ahead and started up a fire. After that fire was started up, there was basically a lot of things. Jose went ahead and was fascinated by all this, traded his magnet for the magnifying glass, and went ahead and went into good use of it. He eventually started its uses for war, and what did he make? Eventually, this leads towards him writing a bunch of documents listing every details and pretty good diagrams about how to use these, which were all pretty much done on by himself. Jose went ahead and decided to test the magnifying glass powers by using it on himself, which is very stupid. He got burns, and his wife had to take care of him for a while. In fact, one day he said, "I'm gonna burn out the whole house," and the only reason why he was not able to burn out the whole house was because his wife stopped him. What kind of lunatic is this guy? Apparently the kind of lunatic who goes ahead and gets through everything. In fact, he even sent all these papers towards the government to also supposedly describe the messenger as having to go ahead, go through a swamp, eventually find a road that the mules take, and eventually going through that into this whole world to the government, sending this little piece of paper with instructions towards the capital, and waiting for a response, which never came. So Jose traded that magnifying glass for an astrolabe, a bunch of astronomical things. The sextant, the astrolabe, whatever kind of navigational device you can think of. And then, after a few days of rantings, he went ahead and said this to his kids. Now remember, this is a time when they thought the Earth was flat. The Earth is not flat. It's round, like a ball. And his kids were like, what? And their mother were like, hey, don't put ideas in their head. Especially not crazy ones. Here we go. So Gabriel Garcia Marquez goes ahead and does a bunch of things. In his book, he finally goes ahead and reveals what that icing was all about. It finally cuts to the scene where there was this literal box of stuff, and the gypsies said, alright, so your favorite MARQUEZ, he's dead, I'm sorry about that. And then they show him a box where, to him, he sees a diamond, and he's like, diamonds! Where did you find this? We're gonna be rich! And then the gypsies are like, no, it's ice. It's just frozen water. What the heck is frozen water? This is diamonds. I'm convinced it's diamonds. It's diamonds, diamonds, diamonds. Basically, he's obsessed with the diamonds. Afterwards, a few years later, when the gypsies returned and they also had the ice, he went ahead and paid a bunch of money so that he could touch it with his sons. And they discovered ice. Finally, we go back to chronological order. The son, now a teen, goes ahead and gets a talk with his father. He's a lot like his father, except he lacks imagination. Then there's this other son who's all like, yeah, there's a bunch of imagination. And then finally there's this son who went ahead and have a lot of imagination. He also has a passion like his father. He also has a similar name to his father. Arlena Jose. And yeah, this is not going to work out pretty well. Several times this has pretty much happened. Afterwards, we get a few backstories. The oldest son of Jose Arcadia Buendía went ahead and ran off with a gypsy woman. Jose Arcadia Buendía starts speaking only Latin, becomes crazy, and starts smashing his house and the laboratory that his gypsy friend gave him as a gift. And so he's forced, and he's tied to a tree trunk for the rest of his life. Like, seriously, the rest of his life. And they're all like, what the heck is this garbage about? And then they invite the priest, and the priest responds in Latin. And they realize he wasn't speaking garbage, he was speaking Latin. The priest tries to put the faith of God back inside this man's brain, but then this man went ahead and almost took out the faith of God in this priest's head, which forced the priest to go ahead, run away, and start saying, okay, I believe in God, I believe in God, I do not think I'm an atheist, I believe in God. Yeah, that was very weird. And then it all crumbles down. How else am I going to describe all this? We cut to the scene where basically a civil war happens, and a bunch of romances start happening again. Colonel Orwenia Buendía is finally shot. And that's the end of part 1 of Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude. I know that was kind of like a little circle singing over there. It doesn't go linear. It goes like here, no, then here, no, then here, then here, then here, then here. Eventually just forcing us to create a line. And also the characters have very similar names, as well as similar traits. So it also doesn't help that there are 17 people here called Aurelianos. There are like 17 Aurelianos here. And that's all I can talk about this book for now. I can't spoil part 2 yet. I think I sort of did miss some parts, but other than that, that's all you need to know for part 1. I'll see you guys soon in the part 2. Bye-bye.